Secret recordings have revealed that Alberta's Conservative government have been overruling recommendations from their top doctors. And this is while Alberta is seeing the worst of COVID-19 out of any province in Canada. So before I get to more on this, let me play this segment from CBC that broke this story.
The CBC News exclusive, secret recordings that show the Alberta government has overruled some of its top health experts in shaping its pandemic response. Alberta's moves have come under scrutiny in recent weeks, with some accusing Premier Jason Kenney of putting the economy before Albertans' health. Kenney has always maintained his government's response has been based on the advice of the province's top doctors. But these new recordings suggest that may not have always been the case. Jenny Russell has our exclusive report today.
20 recordings of pandemic response meetings obtained by CBC News reveal Premier Jason Kenney and his cabinet often micromanaged the actions of civil servants, including Chief Medical Officer of Health Dr. Deena Hinshaw, and sometimes overruled their expert advice. Confidential sources say Kenney is more focused on the economy than public health measures.
Great to be here with Health Minister Shandro, as well as our Chief Medical Officer for Health, Dr. Deena Hinshaw.
On June 9th, the same day the Premier announced the province's Stage 2 economic relaunch, Hinshaw relayed the political direction she was receiving.
Essentially, I think what we're hearing, and we just want to test with the Minister's office, because they don't want us to enforce anything. They want us to educate and no enforcement.
University of Alberta health law professor Ubaka Ogbogu says politicians are clearly undermining Hinshaw's authority.
The story tells me that the Chief Medical Officer of Health doesn't have control of the pandemic response. It tells me that decisions are being made by persons who shouldn't be making decisions.
Hinshaw did not respond to an interview request. At a news conference yesterday, she said her job is to provide a range of policy options to Cabinet, who make the final call.
I am grateful that my recommendations have always been respectfully considered in the final decisions.
A spokesperson for Kenney said it is the job of elected officials to make these decisions, and he said there was no political interference. Jenny Russell, CBC News, Edmonton.
Now, this, of course, is at complete odds with how other provinces are doing. I shouldn't say every other province, but provinces that have been successful, like British Columbia, have listened directly and taken advice from their top doctors. And you just saw a re-election with John Horgan, the BC NDP, win a massive election with a majority because he's doing a fantastic job over there. Meanwhile, you have this Conservative government ignoring science, ignoring the data, and they're doing horribly. Vice here, Alberta has defied the odds to have the most COVID-19 cases in Canada. Despite having the fraction of the population of Ontario and Quebec, Alberta is reporting more infections. Public health experts blame Jason Kenney's weak restrictions and say the worst is still to come. And this, by the way, doesn't, if his intention here was to help the economy, it also doesn't help the economy. If you deal with COVID-19 seriously from the start and have the restrictions from the beginning, then it cuts down on the ability or on the time that you need to have those restrictions. Because if you put the restrictions in place early, get rid of COVID-19 as much as possible, it allows you the freedom to potentially open up earlier and more widespread than you would be able to otherwise. But because COVID-19 is as bad as it is and keeps coming back because they never took it seriously to begin with, they're forced to keep going through all these movements to keep, every few weeks having to reassess what's going on. And that's exactly what's going on in Alberta. And 98%, so this is from over the summer, 98% of doctors who voted in survey have no confidence in Alberta Health Minister. And this is, again, not necessarily, or I should say, it's not the fault of the top doctors in Alberta. It's the fault of the health minister and of the premier for not listening to the advice that is being given to them. Also, Alberta Health Services to lay off up to 11,000 staff. This is a story from October. Lay off up to 11,000 staff, mostly through outsourcing. So while this is all going on, while they have this horrible response to the virus, and it's as bad, or it's the worst as it can be in Alberta compared to other provinces, they're at the same time trying to privatize healthcare, which of course is not going to solve anything. And the one silver lining, I guess, is that people living there are recognizing how horrible Jason Kenney is. A November 17th opinion poll found Albertans were the most dissatisfied of all Canadians with their government's pandemic response. A total of 59% of participants said they were either somewhat or very dissatisfied with action taken by Jason Kenney's United Conservative government. The only silver lining here is that people recognize this, but as a Canadian voter, and I'm sure this is true in every country, I noticed that people have very short-term memory. They think, oh, well, this government, this conservative government isn't the same as the one we had before. No, this one's different. Things will be different this time. And they vote in a conservative government again, and then the same shit happens. Privatization, and when a pandemic or any kind of real emergency happens, a complete botched response. And in 10 years or even in 5 years, people are going to completely forget about this, and they'll think, oh, it's a different party now, different conservative, and it's the exact same thing's going to happen again. They're going to bring in a conservative government again. It's going to be more privatization, more deregulation, more disasters, and people are going to say, why didn't we learn last time? And every single time, people, it's the amnesia or this assumption that, well, just because there's some different people in power, it's going to be a different party. No, because the ideology remains the same.